thank you all for joining the CSINext chapter meeting for December. We're happy that you've been able to join us. If you're a regular member, you know that there will be a survey at the end, and you will need to fill that out to get your credits. But today's presentation, State of CSI, presented by Executive Director Mark Dorsey and Board Chair Ron Geren, will be pretty much an update on what's going on with the CSI Institute and looking forward into the 21st century as we move forward. So thank you to both Mark and Ron for joining us today for our presentation. Want to remind you of our January presentation. That will be a presentation by one of our chapter sponsors, Allegiant. Brad Alexander will be presenting to us. We do not have the topic quite set yet, but we will be putting that on the website. So look back to the website for that information. So with that being said, I would like to again thank Mark and Ron for joining us. If you have any questions, and this really is to be a dialogue, please type your questions into the box and we will get them to answer questions for us, as well as just give us the update on the Institute and the State of CSI. So with that, Mark and Ron, if you'd like to start out, we'll go from there.
Thank you. This is Ron Geren, and I'll let Mark talk here in a few seconds. He's probably going to be the main presenter of the show today, but as board chair, I want to thank everyone for participating in the CSINext meeting, and we've got a lot of interesting things that have happened and a lot of good things coming up in the next year and a half throughout the rest of my term here as board chair under this new structure that we're currently trying to get familiar with and learn and establish a new history for CSI and establish kind of a new set of precedents that we've as we move forward under this new organizational governance structure. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark and let him kind of talk to you where things are going on the CSI staff side of things. Mark?
You bet. And so I really would like this to be a little bit more a response to your questions, concerns, ideas. So I won't take a ton of time, mainly because the last year has been so exceptionally busy. We're in about month 15, and I'm looking forward to not counting my time in CI and baby time. So I'm 15 months in, I think, is the last that I checked. But probably the biggest thing is that at this time last year, we were talking about what a new governance structure might look like, and it really wasn't so much focused on changing the mechanics of how CSI is organized and what it does, but as Ron touched on, it's really more about what we're trying to accomplish, for who, and at what relative priority. And those have been up on the website, and I know, or I'm hoping that many of you have seen some shifts both from the old CSI side, as we're now beginning to redevelop and work through a new website, which is much more community-focused, member-focused, content-focused. But for us on the staff, it's more like about building a new pipeline. We still need to fill that pipeline. I think the things that are most important and relevant to the membership is really the broadest end that the board, your elected board, has stated, which is that members enjoy an environment conducive to realizing their or your professional potential, which is a little bit different than the shift we had been about improving buildings and projects, because buildings and projects or project delivery, those don't join organizations, people do. Not that good project management and building knowledge is important. Those are, I think, prerequisites to helping you realize that professional potential. And so really developing a set of metrics around ensuring that members have state-of-the-art technical expertise, that we're an essential partner in your professional development and have learning resources throughout your careers, that the industry recognizes CSI as a leading resource for the built environment, which includes maintaining our contemporary standards and formats, that we begin to look at different ways of engagement and learning through a variety of mechanisms, not just the traditional ones, that we have credentials that are essentially a gold standard, and not just because we say they're the gold standard, but they're recognized elsewhere as a gold standard, and that members are engaged in a robust community of related professions and organizations. Those are some pretty big, broad ideas, but they help us frame, I think, how we can align our time, energy, and resources more effectively. I think it's no secret, and certainly when I traveled to regions last year, and since the time I was last with you, I actually managed to be in front of 7 regions at 5 different kinds of region events, 2 constructs now. You know, our membership base has gone from 18,000 to 8,000 paid members. We are heavily dependent on a traditional region and chapter system that the regions and chapters themselves are asking me rather directly, is the system broken? How do we engage members more effectively? How do we become more relevant? And I think if we're coming from that place about how to focus on the needs of not only the member, but non-members who rely on the services and ideas that we provide, the better off we're going to be. I was at the Mississippi 50th just this last week, and we got into a discussion about, well, how do we get more people at an event? And I think, not to be too direct, that's really the wrong question. The question should be, how do we provide value that you cannot get anywhere else? What can I get via CSI that I can't get from a building product manager coming in to do a lunch and learn at my firm? How do I enable folks to get the time and the resources they want and need at a time and place that they're choosing? And in a more global environment, how will that knowledge translate, whether it's working in much less Canada, Singapore, China, England, the Middle East, as the firms that we intersect with are global in nature. It's not just about the U.S. market. So as much as I'd like to say, here's what's radically different, I think the radical difference is how we have shaped that conversation with the members. I don't know how that's going to play out yet. I think that's the next set of discussions with the board of directors. But I can tell you this. I think that financially, we've found the bottom where we can begin to push off. We have done some recruiting and active member renewal programs that have yielded some modest increases for the first time in years in terms of membership. We are in discussions right now about the future of Construct and the future of the construction specifier with our friends at Informa and Kenilworth. We are right now, and I would encourage each of you to give us your feedback about CSIresources.org, because we are refining both the reporting as well as the content management structure so that it will compare certainly much more favorably to the old CSINext website. And I think it's going to challenge how we look at information being provided, that it's less through a traditional command and control and more of a sharing of information and resources that we're probably not used to seeing within the culture of CSI. All of those are things that the board has funded, financed, and that we're really just now getting into the second full year of production. Ron did touch on a little bit of some of the staffing. We've hired within the last year a new certification manager. He's just completed his first year. We are assessing the CDT moving into a certification and the extent to which we can do that. Plus, over the longer haul, will be a reevaluation of the CCCA, the CCPR, and CCCS, as well as what are the needs out there that CSI might intersect with. And one of the reasons I'm at Door Hardware Institute, or DHI, today is to talk about the overlap between CSI and their particular silo. We are actively looking at how the vertical associations like DHI intersect with something like Division 8 of Master Format, and where do those relationships need to be fed and for the benefit of our membership across all of the sections of Master Format, not just focusing on, for lack of a better term, the more horizontal ones that cross the technical areas like AIA or AGC in particular. Those are the first two that come to mind. So we're retooling every aspect of and looking at every aspect about how CSI intersects with members. We just completed our first broad-based membership survey. That's going to tell us a lot about the relative value of programs, services, chapter relationships, and we're really just getting started. I'd like to conclude by saying I'm very excited about all of those initiatives. It is a lot for a 17-member staff to handle. I'm cycling back around to Geren. We've also contracted with some folks on the education side who are working closely with Sue Bowman, our new marketing and membership person, to identify what programs and services and what does good education look like going forward, and how has that changed, and how are we delivering content in a contemporary way that's going to appeal not only to the historic CSI member, but in particular the person right out of school who is early to mid-career, and how do we bring those people in contact with the folks that have loads of experience to offer and share. So all of those ideas, concepts, they're things that have cropped up as I've toured the country, as I've had the opportunity to work with Ron and Lane before him, members of the board of directors, and we'll fold in, I think, ultimately more effectively the fellows in the foundation. But that is, in a nutshell, a synopsis of what our last 9 months to a year's worth of work looked like, and a foreshadowing of the kinds of topic areas that we're going to address looking forward as we start to broaden our content and influence throughout the construction industry. So with
Hi,
that,
Mark.
I'm happy to entertain questions, or Ron, if you have anything that sparked what you wanted to add.
Before you jump in, Ron, we have had a question, and Mark, this is really probably more in your wheelhouse. Is back at Construct, we talked a little bit about member retention, and that some of the staff was going to be calling some of the last members. I know that we've had you touched briefly on some of the numbers. How is the member retention effort going?
Well, the pilot program concluded in September. It was successful enough that we relaunched it about 3 weeks ago. So we had a net increase nationally of about 150 members in the month of September. So that bodes well for us. As the other thing that anchored this is that when we sent the survey out, and the survey went to current members and then members who had lapsed within the last 2 years, one of the things that came back was immediately about 10 members saying, we didn't know we had lapsed. So there continues to be demonstrated to us a need to be much more overt and consistent about reaching out to members to say, hey, you're no longer a member of CSI, and please don't miss out. So nothing is going to turn around this last 15 years of history overnight. but what we have learned are things that we know can help us be successful. I think one of the challenges that we're going to have to talk about is the way products and services are being delivered and filtered through regions and chapters, because the member experience is dramatically different depending on your relationship with a given region or a given chapter. And by different, I don't inherently mean good. In some cases, it's much stronger. In cases, it's much weaker. And I think the leadership, and by that I mean chapter leadership, region leadership, national leadership, are going to have to be willing to have a very open and honest set of conversations about what that really looks like if we were imagining the CSI of the future as opposed to the CSI of the past. Because that variation in service, that variation in branding is actually ultimately harmful to the organization in the long run, and I think that's been borne out by the last decade and a half of our history. On the upside, I hear pretty much everyone I've run into being willing to have that conversation, and I think that's a credit to the membership. And that will really enable us to get much more effective in terms of membership and retention, because in the absence of that strong support system at a national level, regions and chapters have been left to their own devices and do what you would naturally do when you're not getting support. I would say that the board and the staff are committed to providing that support and developing a very sharp list of things that chapters and regions can count on from the Institute so that we have a healthy, vibrant membership going forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was good to hear the growth is back. But it's
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's back. I've just seen early. I'm going to the early returns are in from New Hampshire.
and I think that's a really good point. But and just because you've got 25 million members doesn't necessarily mean that that's a vibrant organization. So it's more about what we do, and I think that's what I was hearing you say. So, Ron, what would you like to add?
What I'll probably present here is more of a board perspective on things, and what I'd like to do is kind of advise or educate people on how the board and the staff interact at the Institute level, because it has been a dramatic change that has occurred over this past year, and some people have been very vocal about it. Some have been very supportive of it. And as a matter of fact, it was more supportive of this change than we have ever anticipated. We were expecting some, I wouldn't say stiff resistance, but we were expecting some resistance, and it just was not there. There was some concerns, but we've now almost completed 5 months of, or almost 6 months of governance under the new policy governance model. And to kind of give some background of what this policy governance is compared to what CSI has been operating under the past 60 some odd years, is that the board has moved from a position of being prescriptive in its requirements to the staff to one of more like a parent, in that you have a child and you give them some guidelines, some parameters to follow without dictating to them exactly what they need to do step by step. And in the past, it kind of been a case of mother may I, can I do this, from the staff to the board. And so we've kind of flipped that around and given the staff a lot more flexibility to operate within the parameters that the board has established under what we call policies. And in that case, the board does not need to be actively engaged in the day-to-day operations of what the Institute is doing. Our primary role is to be the voice of CSI members and to translate those concerns, those interests, ideas of what they would like to see out of their organization. In other words, what Mark had pointed out to, the value, what is it they're getting out of CSI. We try to translate that into requirements that we pass on to the board or onto the staff, and then they respond accordingly. And Mark had mentioned that member survey, which was just recently accomplished, and in January when we have our first board meeting since that survey was issued, we'll be responding to that, taking a look at it, and making some decisions on that. So the board has truly become more of a strategic type of organization, if you want to call the board an organization, that provides direction for CSI rather than establishing prescriptive requirements that the board or that the staff must follow in order to accomplish. In other words, it was basically giving the staff a means of escape, so to speak, in the past, that, well, the board didn't approve this, or the board approved this and it failed, and so it was kind of a way of letting the staff off the hook on responding to our requirements. So this new policy governance then allows them, the staff, to do what they feel is important for the membership in response to what direction we kind of give them as in the strategic direction, and not more specific guidance. So that's kind of a little background on where we're at, where the board is at now. It's if anybody that's attending today has been on the board in the past, and if you showed up at one of our board meetings today, you'd be totally shocked. It's completely different than what it has been in the past, and although I was not on the board prior to the first governance change that we had, I've heard some of the horror stories from that. But since then, I've been on the board for a number of years, and could see the day-to-day stagnation that would happen because of a board's failure to respond due to concerns over risk. They just didn't want to take that jump. And in this case, we've got people on staff who are experts in their fields. They're experts in education, certification, in management and sales and marketing and all that. Something that a lot of volunteer boards just do not have, and don't have the capability of doing that on a day-to-day basis. So why not give those experts more control over those aspects of the institution, and let the board step back from those day-to-day operations, and then just look at, where's the ship being steered? That's the kind of the thing that we're looking at. So
you mentioned, Ron, and I've got another question actually that's come in.
Okay.
But, you did mention that you expected a lot more resistance to this board structure. Was that more from, has staff actually handled the, how have they responded in general? Has it been very favorable from their standpoint, not just the members? I wasn't quite sure where you were expecting the resistance, and kind of maybe
the resistance, I would say, would be from the not from the staff itself, because I think the staff was feeling a little frustrated on the board activities over the past, and I think that the resistance was probably anticipated from the membership itself, in that this is the way we've kind of always done things, and we're have varying degrees of age within the organization, but we all know CSI tends to be on the older end of the spectrum there in membership, and so we kind of fall into that comfortable zone of this is the way we've kind of always done it, and we don't want to upset the apple cart, so we keep continuing to do the same things that we've done in the past, even though we know that they aren't as productive as they could be, and so that's what we were kind of anticipating. But like I said, we had some concerns over the change, but for the most part, it was very positive. It was 100% positive on the board itself when we were making this change. We knew we needed to make a change, and the consultant that was hired to help us through this transition process and developing these policies was absolutely amazed at how quick the board made the transition. It was almost in record time, in essentially less than 6 months of total effort to make this transition. So everybody on the board was fully in favor of making this move, and then trying to get that out to the membership so that they would understand the positive aspects of making this transition was important, and apparently our communication went very well because it was very fully supported, especially in the bylaws elections that was held at the end of the FY16. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. We do have another question, though, that is going back to something that, Mark, you brought up about your comments of the difference in member experience at both chapter and region levels. And if you would maybe start on how Institute can deliver a positive deliverable to the non-affiliated members, which, as this question states, really constitute our biggest chapter, if you will, since we have so many people that are not tied to a specific chapter.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because if you'll permit me just a little bit of history of associations, and I'll try to be brief and not bore you to death. If you think about how we used to get information in order to do our work, generally speaking, one of two things would happen. Well, one of three things. You would probably go to the library and talk to somebody at a reference desk. You would call an association that had expertise in the field, and they would send you that information, or you go to a colleague. And typically you would get introduced to those colleagues in your field, pardon me, through a local, pardon me, through a local relationship. Excuse me, I need to grab some water, and I'll be right back. So I'm going to let you take that.
Excellent. Well, I hope that water does him some good.
So you would do that in an analog way, and then Google happened. And what Google did, just like Uber has changed how we hail a taxi and our expectations for what hailing a taxi looks like, and Airbnb has changed and threatened traditional ways of getting temporary lodging to the point where you see institutions rebelling against those ideas. Chapters and regions and national organizations and international organizations have been threatened ultimately by the idea that information is easily shareable, and you don't have to physically get together to do that anymore. And that what that's really threatened is not so much the information sharing, but also the traditional ways that we are used to forging and maintaining relationships. And kids dating is one way to go about it. Swipe left, swipe right, depending on, if you're interested in meeting whoever that is on your phone. So what I think is incumbent on us as an association is to provide content that that you can get virtually, and find different ways and support ways for people to get together in a physical space, because there is still a desire to do that, but it is not enough to charge for the privilege of just getting together. Companies won't pay for that, and employees may not take the time to do that because they are pressed to deliver more and more value, and have been for less money for decades now. It's not just since the recession. We were well on our way to being one of the most overworked economies on the planet well before the recession. We beat the Japanese in terms of those hours years ago. So what I envision CSI doing, and touching on what Ron was talking about, is finding content that can be repurposed, finding ways to enable folks to connect together locally more easily, and doing so in a way that can support the chapters that have the ability to get together. And as I've talked to the chapters, one of the challenges they have is they spend more time doing administrative work related to membership and accounting and trying to find a place to hold a meeting than really focusing on the value of the meeting they want to provide in the first place. And I think we need to look at that equation and find out where the Institute can enable that more effectively. And if it's a virtual group, I think the same rules still apply, because sooner or later you're going to intersect physically with another member. So we need to be able to provide the content that's going to enable you virtually, just as we would for a group getting together face to face, and ensure that there's value in that interaction with CSI to you. What that exactly looks like is part of what we're in the process of working through now.
Excellent. That sounds very, very good. With that being said, I know that there used to be a big call for members to volunteer, once a year, and you've volunteered at one point in time, but I know that you've kind of gone to a more on an as-needed basis. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're engaging the members to participate at Institute level?
You bet. Well, so I want to start with volunteer equals voluntary. That if somebody signs up to do something, they're doing so for they're ultimately looking for either recognition for the participation, a feel good about a desire to contribute to the community. And the worst thing you can do is ask somebody to volunteer and then not really have a thing for them to do or a place for them to go. And one of the other shifts that has happened because of technology is, volunteers and voluntary organizations typically were also the administration that drove the activity of whatever that unit was. That's still largely true in chapter organizations, and in national organizations not so much so, because as you evolve and hire staff to take on that role, what's really left? Well, what's left is the knowledge, the information that needs to be shared, and the expertise of the organization. For lack of a better word, I'd say the soul of the organization. In the new structure that Ron talked about, one of the things that there are, to me, several cardinal sins. Cardinal sin 1 is not have anything to do or a clear purpose when you get there. Cardinal sin 2 is that purpose is essentially a waste of time, and you spend more time talking about the process than doing the work. Cardinal sin 3 is doing work that nobody really asks for, wants, or needs, because there's no evaluation. And there's an old joke that the outcome of an excellent committee is a call to continue the committee, rather than evaluating the work product. And in that regard, volunteer committees and staff have a lot in common. And sometimes that has been, in the pejorative sense, been transitioned to, well, are you volunteer driven or staff driven? And I push back and say, well, we're all mission driven. We all have competing time, constraints. If it's a staff member, it's multiple projects. If it's a volunteer, it's your work life and your family life and the number of things that you volunteer for. So what we've started with first is CSI reorganized into board committees, and those are committees that are designed to help the board in its work. So that would be things like audit, investment oversight. The board as a whole works on strategy. The board as a whole works on, there is no, executive committee to do those executive functions, because the board has delegated those executive functions to its paid staff, subject to the board's oversight. Awards, honors, and the College of Fellows also fold up, because they relate again back to membership connection, membership strategy, all those things that inform that larger question of what's the end goal you're trying to achieve, what's the value you're trying to create for what group and at what priority. From the staff standpoint, if you were to look at what our traditional committee functions like certification, education, knowledge, practice groups, those typically are committees that are formed for the purpose of creating a product or service. And the staff is accountable by virtue of the board direct delegation for creating those products and services. And what we are in the process of retooling are the opportunities for members to contribute so that they can see themselves in that successful outcome of that product or service, or in some cases informing strategy, or in some cases providing content for other members. But doing it in a way so that when you get to the end of that term of service, it's really clear what's expected, what's the group expected to do, for how long, and what should the result look like. Just as all of us want to be managed in our daily lives, I think. So that's what the shift is, and we're in the process of making that shift. And as Ron touched on, that for some folks it's a really good thing, and for other folks it's really uncomfortable, because it flies in the face of what you used to do to be successful in an organization. And how we are typically successful is I did a really good job on a project, and now I'm going to be on the chapter board, and then I'm really good at running events or managing the chapter, and that's going to get me to the national board, and that becomes an up the ladder kind of promotion. But management doesn't really work that way in this day and age, as any Jim Collins student would tell you. So we hired a person who's been on just about 90 days now. Her name is Catherine Lux Fry. Her job is Senior Manager of Volunteer Relations and Office Administration. Her job is to ensure that we are not only clearly defining those roles and responsibilities and ensuring that people have a good experience from a volunteer standpoint, but what will likely happen is that there won't be an annual call for volunteers so much as an ongoing call for volunteers, with much more specificity about what's to be accomplished and when, and what your term of service would look like.
Super. We have kind of a quiet group here today, it appears. They are not asking lots of questions, so you've apparently answered everything very well. So I guess as you're looking forward, one of the other items that we had on our topics of discussion that I don't know that I've heard a lot about is some of the leader tools. Would either of you care to talk about tools that are being kind of in the working process? I know that there's been a lot of changes recently.
Can you be a little more specific with me about which leader tools we're talking about?
Oh, I'll leave it open and let you talk about whatever leader tools you want.
Well, so I am not as well versed. If Sue were here on the phone with me, I can tell you a lot more. So
okay.
Yeah, I'm looking for a little guidance to help me focus the answer a bit.
Well, I know. Go ahead,
I think this is Daniel here. I think the original question was related to, you've got the new CSI resources.org online, and the current leader toolbox is, starting to get a little long in the tooth. Is that going to start getting updated and integrated better with that?
Yes. So I can tell you that actually just did a presentation at the West region, and if you were to contact Sue Bowman, that's SBOWMAN at CSINet.org, then she can talk to you a little bit more specifically. I think the question that Sue is going through right now is which tools are still relevant and why in this day and age. Because, for example, leadership training has been more focused on things like Robert's Rules of Order and bylaws, as opposed to how do you lead the organization and move your chapter forward. There are a number of reporting tools that are being revamped in our new Higher Logic system that will allow people with permissions to get the kinds of tools they need to run their chapter more effectively. But I will be the first to admit I am not as versed in the depth of that as Sue and a couple of the other staff are. I do know that the West region got pretty excited when they found out they could get access to certain leader tools on their phone, and those are being transitioned. So if there are specific tools that you think want to be updated, should be updated, or you cannot easily find, because it's not inherently true that all those tools aren't available, but they may not be surfacing as readily as we'd like on CSI resources, please feel to drop me an email or drop Sue an email, and we will devote our time and attention to resolving that problem.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that answers really most of it. I think one of the keys to the tools, of course, to get the seed planted out there is, the old leader toolbox was just general database reporting, which, like you said, doesn't come back to how relevant it is. The other side of this is, member retention in the value. I think, let those down at the chapter levels, region levels, etc., know what's going on with, the drop members and everything, and enabling the leadership to have access to those tools, I think will be a big benefit. And it may be there, like you said, we just don't know where to find it.
Let me touch on that real quick, Daniel. That helps quite a bit. The main issue there is that the data has been garbage in, garbage out. So even, we're not getting good information in order to create the kinds of reporting tools that, rather than have us run a spreadsheet, send it to someone, and then in a classic example, we got a reply on an Excel spreadsheet where the person receiving it said the columns were too wide and wanted us to fix that. From a tech standpoint, there is a question about teaching people how to fish. So what I envision we will wind up doing is actually providing more of those reporting and resource tools via CSI resources, so you can log in and see at a glance, who's a member, who's current, what's your renewal rate look like, and look at that more from a business intelligence standpoint. And I've already seen the new tools that Higher Logic is planning to roll out, which we are hopeful will be available in the second quarter of the coming calendar year. That's going to dramatically change how we give real-time information to leadership, to chapters, to board members, so they can see the performance of the organization, because most of the frustration right now is around, that I hear, is around a terrible execution of an antiquated process. And to me, that's insult to injury. We have a reporting system that is labor intensive, that is based functionally on sending checks back and forth when we're in an electronic fund transfer mobile era. So we're going to be pushing a lot of change that will provide very strong incentives for us and the chapters to react in a real-time basis, so that members can see the information they want and need when they need it, and that they can trust that that information will be timely and accurate, because the essence of trust is just that: timely, accurate information when you want and need it. Anything that delays that only fuels inadequacies. And a good example would be communications I get from chapters that say, hey, we're just checking our books now. And what month is it? December? Saying that they hadn't received a payment dating back to last April. That's a relationship problem. If it's taken, 7 months to let us know that they may not have data that we thought we gave them, then shame on us for not having a reporting system that can identify it, and shame on the receiving end for not identifying it sooner. Because both of those translate to the member is not being served. And we get lost in what are we doing for each other, and forgetting the ultimate loser in that is the member who is not getting their products and services and emails and information from us in a timely, effective manner. That's what we have to stay focused on.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm doing my happy dance over here. Thanks, Mark.
Do we have other questions from our membership? Like I said, they're a real quiet group today, and we're at about 10 minutes till 1. So, Mark or Ron, do you have any other items that, about moving forward into the future? What should we be, anything that you haven't touched on already? You've done a really great job of giving us an update, and I appreciate that.
This is Ron. Well, some of the things to be on the lookout for is education, and some new opportunities there where the staff is actively engaged in developing updated education programs. I know we've been a little bit stagnant over the years, with the exception of Construct and some of the online webinars that CSI provides, but we're definitely looking at improving what we provide as far as an education product for the 21st century. So we're probably looking at more online type engagement in that area. And then one of the other major areas obviously is certification. And we're, as Mark alluded to earlier on, that we're actively looking at each of the certification programs, primarily the CDT, and that it's our most sought out. Well, I wouldn't call it a certification right now, it's a certificate, but we're in the process of making that transition from a certificate to a certification that can be recognized by other organizations. As you all know, or at least maybe most of you might know, NCARB used to recognize the CDT as far as its elective education credits. Since NCARB has dropped the elective education requirements, obviously the support for CDT through NCARB has dropped as well. However, they still support the CCS and the CCCA certification. So if the CDT can make its way into a certification program, then it may be recognized by some of these other licensing and registration organizations as well as being a program to implement. One of the things we're also looking at is the accreditation of our certification programs, so that we meet some national and international standards. We're looking at it. It's not going to be an immediate transition. There is some financial issues involved in doing that, so we have to be cautious about what we put into that type of accreditation programs. So certification and education are some of the big things that you'll be seeing, and then the technology, the CSI outreach, which has been an ongoing thing, and a lot of you have probably been participating in that through the CSI resources. We're making the transitions to different platforms, so it's just not on your PC or Mac, on your tablet, on your cell phone. So we're reaching out into other areas that CSI hasn't ventured into in the past. And on that note, it is, and Mark can probably elaborate on this, at a recent conference for the certificate or for the online presence for CSI. CSI won an award for its new website, and so it's an exciting thing. It means that people are recognizing the advances that CSI is making, and I hope to continue this type of improvement over the next year and a half. In my term, I'm hoping it'll continue on after my term as well, when Ellen K. Cruz comes on board.
As do we all, Ron. We love you, but we want to keep it going.
Excellent. Mark, anything else to add?
No, I think Ron covered that really well.
Did we lose Mark?
Well, I really, again, this is Nina Gilio, president of CSINext. I really appreciate both of you participating and taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and talk to our organization, our chapter, and I think we're all going through a lot of struggles with what an organization like this needs to be and how we support it, because we are a passionate group. And so it's much appreciated the leadership is willing to take time and participate. For those of you that are attending, please do fill out the survey to get your credits for this session, and we will look forward to seeing all of you in January.
Thank you very much.
Very much.